Storm Amy has passed and it's time to get ready to be back on the move. So I need to take off the many mooring lines which have held us fast in a sort of spider when Storm Amy was at her peak, and we need to do engine checks, load water, passage planning for the leg up to Crinan and Oban, and also do a Met brief just to check that the weather is doing what we think it's doing. Good morning. It is stupidly early in the morning and I am working on getting Trilline ready to sail out of Ballycastle across the North Channel and up the Sound of Jura. There's been a frontal passage during the night which seems to be over, but forecast actually isn't for it to be over for a few hours, which is a bit peculiar. So I might just wait to slip until I've got the latest forecast. We may not go to Crinan in the end. We might go to somewhere like Lusa Bay or Lowlandman's Bay on the west coast because we've got this west wind. But I think it will be very quiet actually by the time we get up to Crinan because it's quite well sheltered. So we will see, and I will be with you as things eventuate. That's us clear of Ballycastle, and we are just clearing Rathlin Sound. Currently coming up to the East Lighthouse on Rathlin Island. It's a grey morning, and we are about to push across the North Channel with south-going tide. There's lots of wind today. We're under 2 reefs and the jib at the moment, and I'll probably put the staysail up once we're clear of the East Lighthouse, and that should drive us along nicely. We're crawling across the traffic separation scheme in the North Channel. TSS is a sort of motorway for ships. We have to cross it so that our water track is at 90 degrees to the lane, because that increases the opportunity for merchant ships to see you by radar or visually. Unfortunately, what that means is that currently my ground track is south of east, which is not that great really from where we're trying to go to. It's a consequence of making a cross tide passage and not really having as much wind as I'd hoped for. If we had a bit more wind, the vectors would work out better. The vast bulk of the Mull of Kintyre is now 5 miles under my lee, and my track is, thank goodness, beginning to bend up the Sound of Jura as we get out of the main flow of the tide in the North Channel. I am sitting down below most of the time because it's warm, and on deck it is sort of smurring with rain and it is windy, so it's very nice down here, which is one of the great joys of solo sailing. You don't feel obliged to sit on deck because everyone else is sitting on deck. The wind vane is steering the boat and it's doing quite well. In less than a metre of sea, I'd say. There's a bit of chop which is holding us down a little bit, but I'm just keeping the boat powered up all the way, because if I take any of the power off, we just go sideways. We are surprisingly nearly close hauled. In part because of what the tide did to us coming across the North Channel. So now I am just trying to work my way north of the track that I need so that I can bear away later and not have to tack on what should be a crosswind downwind sail. The tide, I think, is about to turn, so we should be about to get a bit of a kick, which will be nice. And we are doing 4.7 through the water. We've got 5 over the ground, so yeah, maybe the tide has just turned. And it's really very civilised. We've got about 14 to 19 knots apparent, and we are chugging along under jib, staysail, and 1 reef in the main, I think, or is it 2? I can't remember. I'll have to have a look. How embarrassing. 1 reef. 1
one reef in the most. There we go. Very embarrassing. Doesn't know what sail state he's got set. Anyway, boat's pretty comfortable. She's not digging her rail in. There's not much more to say really. I think I'll be having a cup of tea shortly, and I don't know, it's about 12-15 miles to Gear, and from there about the same again to maybe a bit more to Crinan, about 40 miles I guess to Crinan, so be most of the day's work really. We are now abeam of the pointy bit of Gear. The boat is going pretty well. We're doing about 5 knots, and it's a bit of a struggle to keep on track at the moment because the wind is very twisty, as it often is in these narrow sounds, and the wind vane steers relative to the wind, so the boat's wobbling about a bit, which is alright at the moment because the sound's about 5 miles wide, but it gets a lot narrower very quickly. The other thing is that the tide, we're getting into the portion of the sound where the tide runs really quickly, and I keep hoping that I'm going to pick up a good hoofing from the tide, but we don't quite seem to be getting it. I may be chasing tide up the sound rather than being chased by it, which is a altogether unsatisfactory situation. We were passed a minute ago by Cloud 9 of Lorne, a 13-metre yacht going southbound. She's a charter boat and she was being very nicely handled, so that was good. And yeah, there's not much more to report really, except for the fact that the sun has come out, which is sort of expected after the rain. That's the word I was looking for, after the rain, but it's a much nicer day. It's even quite warm, and the Paps of Jura are sitting out to port on Jura in the mist. Now, abeam of the entrance to West Loch Tarbert, which is a vast loch that runs almost the whole way through the Mull of Kintyre and into the Clyde, but it doesn't quite do it. And we are struggling now to maintain 4.5 because the wind is beginning to fall light, so I've shaken out the last reef, which inevitably means I'll have to put it in again in a minute. The sun is in and out in the clouds and is just beginning to start thinking about going down towards the horizon, and we've just passed a fish farm ship, Ronger Sky, and Finlagan, the Calmac ferry, has just gone astern of us. And I can't free the boat off anymore because then we'll run into the east shore, and I can't come up onto the wind anymore because then we'll hit the rocks off Lowlands Bay. So we're just sort of balancing at the moment with the width of the sound coming down, and as I said last time, I think I've screwed up the tide because the tide is still in our favour, but I suspect by the time we get to Crinan it won't be. I'm just not doing the sums because I don't want to know the answer. Dusk is beginning to fall, amplified by the deep blue clouds which are lying over everything. We've just passed Skervul, which is a light beacon on the rock on the west side of the Sound of Jura, and we are looking into Loch Sween on our starboard bow as we come up the Sound. Boat's going nicely. Channel's getting super narrow now, so we're down to about 2.5 miles, which on wind vane steering means that you have to be properly alert all the time. So it's also super pretty though, so I don't mind being super alert. It's about 9 PM and Traleen has come to a single anchor in Lusa Bay because the tide turned against us and the wind fell light and it was all getting a bit miserable. So I decided to stop and have some rest. Good morning, we are in Lusa Bay still, anchored here overnight. It's snurring gently outside, which is a sort of good Scots word for light rain, and the anchorage was alright. We held well. What wasn't so great was that because I came here in the pitch dark, I
felt my way in, and I've anchored really quite a long way out from the ideal spots. So we're rolling quite a bit and just moving around in the cross tide. The next piece of the passage takes us up into the Sound of Lewing. We don't need to go through the doors more, after all, because we are on the west side of the Sound of Jura, and it doesn't give us any advantage, so that's good. Sound of Lewing is narrow, and there are lots and lots of islands, and the big concern really is not misidentifying one island for another, and the other concern is not getting swept into Corrie of Wrekin or the little Corrie of Wrekin, the grey dogs, because there's a huge amount of cross tide flow, cross passage flow, tide flowing across the passage, so cross track error is a real problem. I am just starting to get ready to go. The bridle's off and we will get underway in about half an hour, I think, and that will just set us up for when the tide turns. We're coming a beam of Ruda Skier, the light which marks the beginning of the Narrows, and we are in really quite poor visibility. The rain is coming down a lot, and it's not particularly big drops, but it's not very nice out there at the moment, and if I'm going to bail out, this is kind of the point at which I would have to decide to bail out to Crinan. So yeah, I think we'll carry on, but it's not ideal. I don't like running stuff when the visuals are so cut down, especially since I don't have radar. I mean, obviously there's GPS, but I try not to trust in one position system only. I'm editing this later and I realise I recorded nothing of note, mostly because I was hand steering. The wind kept rising as I left Lusa Bay and surfed downwind. Yes, given enough wind, even a full keelboat will surf up through the Sound of Lewing in the rain and low-hanging cloud. We hit 11 knots over the ground, passing Corrie of Wrekin, at a very respectful distance, and her equally violent sister, the little Corrie of Wrekin, and carried that speed until we exited the Sound. It made for a bit of a frantic session of boat handling, because even with only the jib and 3 lit reefs in the main, we were becoming overpowered and I was having to hand steer. I had to put up with it though, because the Narrows are definitely not the place to come round and strike the main away. Once clear of the north end of the Sound, I reduced down to the Yankee alone, one of the very few times I've had to take Trelane down to that little sail, and we plunged onwards for the last few miles to Oban. I was significantly unhappy for those miles because as we got out of the Narrows, the wind veered, which left me with a vicious lee shore under my bow, which is far closer than I like. Oban Harbour opened up cleanly though, and once past the ferry to the Isle of Kerrera, I struck the jib and motored on to the very lovely Kerrera Marina, where the staff took my lines and steered me towards the lounge, where islanders and staff were propping up the bar. Sorry about the engine noise. You join me just as I'm preparing to get underway to Corpach at Fort William, which is where the Caledonian Canal exits into Loch Linnhe, and in order to get there we need to leave Oban, fairly obviously, and then transit up Loch Linnhe, passing through Port Appin, and then through the Corrie Narrows. The tide's running in the Corrie Narrows currently at about 4.5 knots, so we need to get that gate right. It's spring tides at the moment, autumn spring tide, so it's fairly large, and yeah, so I'm hoping that I've done the maths right, because if I haven't, it's going to get very boring. So this is a bit unexpected and very pleasant. We're currently sailing up through the Sound towards Port Appin, and at the moment the boat is performing great under full sail. We've got 4.6 knots, and so we're able to sail, which is not really what I expected. But that tells you something about the local scale winds here in the Linn of Lorne and inside the Hebrides. It's often a very local affair, and there's these showers running through periodically, and the wind is very patchy as a result. So I don't know how long it will last, but I'm just enjoying it while I can.
So we just forced our way through the Corran Narrows, had to alter course slightly for La Balou, a French cruise ship. We are now motor sailing, sadly, up Loch Linnhe. We've got about 5 knots of apparent. I've still got the mainsail up. I don't actually think it's doing very much, but it might be stabilising the boat a bit, so we'll leave it for a while. And we are about, I don't know, 7 miles from the entrance to the canal. I'm going to go to the new marina at Corpach, Thomas Telford Marina there. It's not that new, it's a year or two old now. It's a lovely facility, community run, and I will then get the boat ready for the canal, and excitedly for my mum to join me for a few days and come through the canal with me. I'm not sure whether she'll be helping me or having a ride, but I think the combination sounds good.
That's all for this video. If you've got this far, please check if you subscribed. I'd love for you to come along on the journey. Next video I start the winter works on Trelane and smash up the galley in preparation for a complete rebuild.